Everybody come see us on tour. We'll be in Columbus, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. There's this new series that's going to be airing on Tucker Carlson's network. It's called All the President's Men, and it's a controversial new documentary series. It's going to be airing on Tucker Carlson Network early November. That's right now. The gripping 6-part series unveils the untold story of how the deep state systematically targeted and destroyed the lives of those who stood by Donald Trump in an attempt to remove the democratically elected president from office. Each episode focuses on one key figure whose career and reputation were under siege starting in 2015, featuring insights from George Papadopoulos, remember him? Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Kash Patel, Rudy Giuliani, and Tucker Carlson. The series exposes not just personal attacks, but a coordinated effort to undermine Trump's presidency. The series was directed by Sean Stone and produced by award-winning filmmaker Igor Lopatenek. He did Ukraine on Fire, and Vera Tomalova and Simona Manji. But right now I'm going to show you here's a trailer for it. It's 1 minute long. Let's watch.
They take me to a back room. They say, this is what happens when you work for Trump.
From about the moment Papadopoulos joins the Trump campaign, you got all these people all around the world starting to swirl around him.
They were trying to frame me for something.
I thought this guy is psychopath.
You describe it as almost a Jason Bourne novel.
Our country has devolved into what the founders never envisioned, is an empire.
They put me in a jail cell. I'm in there with this guy. He tells me it's not so bad. You're going to be eating chicken wings with us on Wednesdays.
Guilty.
I never heard of Papadopoulos. He was the coffee boy. But it mentions that you got pregnant.
Yes. It was a very sad day. I went from paradise to hell.
The CIA, MI6, Mossad, what man or woman has the power or the pull to orchestrate that type of momentum?
The tides have changed. I've gone from a pariah to somebody who could possibly expose the biggest spying scandal in modern history.
So let me bring on the filmmaker, Sean Stone, media host, author, actor, poet, speaker, and spiritual activist. That sounds exhausting. He directed the comedy film Fury of the Fist and Golden Fleece, and he's appeared in various other projects until 2022. He hosted a show on the RT network, and early in his 6-part series, All the President's Men, exposing the deep state's coordinated attack on Donald Trump supporters, is going to be released very soon on Tucker Carlson's network. Please welcome to the show, Sean Stone. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Jimmy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So tell me, were people who were working, so they always say that Donald Trump is going to be the one that is going to use the power of the government to target his political opponents. So what you're saying is that the exact opposite is true, that Donald Trump's political opponents targeted not only Donald Trump, but all the people surrounding him? How could that be?
How could that be? We have a long history, as we know, of, those of us that actually study and research things, right? We have a deep state. We have what people have called shadow governments, conspiracies that exist within this apparatus of the permanent bureaucracy, right? FBI, CIA, and plenty of other three-letter agencies, by the way.
So can I just stop you for a second? When you say conspiracies inside the government and the deep state, I have to remind people, Vietnam War was a conspiracy. The Afghanistan war was a conspiracy. Both Iraq wars were conspiracies. The Libyan war was a conspiracy. Syria's conspiracy. Ukraine currently is a conspiracy. So those are the conspiracies we're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, those are just a few, not to get into the FBI's COINTELPRO or the CIA's MKUltra and countless, up to 70 countries that they were involved with coups and other sorts of shenanigans, election interference. It's just, you take your pick. So the idea that they have used that against the American people as well, we know historically to be true. This is a case of the intelligence services under Obama working essentially, you could say, by what they called the Hillary Clinton plan. That's what John Durham put in the report, was that essentially they wanted to paint Trump as a Russian agent, essentially as having this sort of backroom deal with Putin or with the Russians. And the intelligence services knew about it. They cooperated with the FBI's counterintelligence operation Crossfire Hurricane, which started in 2016 during Trump's campaign to go after and investigate and spy on Papadopoulos, General Flynn, maybe Roger Stone. We don't, that's a weird one, because we don't know exactly how deep the spying goes. This is only what's come out. We do know that they bumped, or they had, which means that they assigned foreign intelligence operatives to connect with up to 40 of Trump's campaign, advisors and people, right? So the Carter Page is another very famous one. So these are some of the people that we feature in our series. And I think through the course of the series, you'll understand the depth of the conspiracy, because it's something that requires 6 episodes to start to unravel fully. I don't even think fully, as I said, we only know what's come out, kind of like with all of these conspiracies, right? We only know what the government has shown us as far as, FBI texts that have come out, showing the bias by the heads of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Trump, that they were biased against him, for example. And some of the documentation that's come out is very, it's limited. And even we interviewed Kash Patel, who was one of the guys working with the House Intelligence Committee. And he's like, so much of this stuff is still classified. We couldn't even declassify it because Gina Haspel, who was even Trump's CIA director, was basically a deep state creature. She would refuse to allow them to declassify a lot of these things. So we don't have the full picture, but we certainly can give you a pretty good portrait.
So, Gina Haspel was, I think she was at some point in charge of the torture program.
Yeah, one of the people. Yeah, I don't know if she was in charge or she was partly involved. She was partly in charge.
Definitely involved with it, and a lot of people say she broke the glass ceiling because she was the first female CIA head. And what I say is she did break that glass ceiling, and then she picked up one of those shards of glass and started torturing someone with it. But anyway, so. When we don't know exactly when this is going to start airing on Tucker Carlson's network?
The holdup is right now there's some kind of blackout with advertising for anything connected to the election. I'm not quite clear on it.
Oh, okay.
And so that's been the holdup. We're pushing. It's ready. So it really is just as soon as this blackout ends, I think people can already be signing up. They can already be ready for it. It should be out this Friday. Worst case scenario next week. It's ready to go. It's just sitting there waiting. It's like, engines are ready. We're just ready for the green light.
So it's been clear to everybody who watches this show, because we were the first ones to debunk Russiagate on this show. I brought on Bill Binney, who was the top NSA codebreaker for decades and decades. And he actually outsmarted the FBI when they tried to put him in prison for telling the truth. And he showed how this whole thing, which was based on the Russians hacking into the DNC computer, was completely made up. It didn't happen, and most likely was Seth Rich. And that's why they had to smear us in the Washington Post when we just asked normal questions about Seth Rich's murder. And I remember I was on a panel with Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movie and Cenk Uygur on a panel at the Young Turks. And I said, can anybody remember, because I had just gotten smeared by the Washington Post for asking normal questions about Seth Rich's murder. I said, can you remember any other time in history when reporters weren't allowed to ask questions about an unsolved murder investigation? And they just looked at me like, no, of course not. That's never.
Remember.
Go ahead.
It's called the JFK assassination.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You weren't allowed to ask questions about, but they said they solved it. It was the magic bullet theory.
Well, they said they solved it, but no one was ever tried or
that's right.
That's put on trial for it.
No. So and then people don't understand also. So to get Russiagate going and to get the prosecution of Trump and the people surrounding him going, which, by the way, they put a lot of them in jail. One of his top advisors, I'm blanking on his name, just got out of prison.
Bannon.
Steve Bannon.
Bannon was for basically doing what Garland did, which was contempt of Congress, right? So, when it's Bannon, they throw him in jail for 4 months. When it's Garland, they don't seek any kind of prosecution. I mean,
right.
We understand that there's been a serious lack of enforcement when it comes to Democrats in recent years.
And what people also don't talk about, another conspiracy, they did remember when Donald Trump said, hey, that Barack Obama tapped my phones, and everybody said, oh, he's crazy. Well, it turns out they did tap his phones. And how did they get the clearance from the government to put a tap on not only Donald Trump's phone, but everybody in his campaign's phone. And they have a 2-hop rule, which means you can put a tap on everybody in Trump's campaign, and then anybody they talk to, you can also tap their phone. It's called the 2-hop rule. So they had an unbelievable blanket of phone tapping going on. And how did they get that phone tap permission from the government? Well, you had to go today to go to the FISA court, which is supposed to be there so we can prosecute terrorists. So they went to the FISA court, and the FBI, but confirmed by the inspector general, lied 17 times to the FISA court. It's not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 10 times. 17 times they had to lie to get a phone tap on Donald Trump's campaign. Now, again, you don't have to be a Donald Trump, which is what I've been saying since the beginning. You don't have to be a fan of Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I don't tell anybody to vote for him. But what I try to make the point, and I tried to make the point to a Harvard-educated Cornell West when he was on my show, if they can do this to a former president, don't you think they're going to do it to you, dummy? If you ever are a threat to the establishment, which he's not. But if you ever become one, they're going to do the same thing they're doing to Donald Trump. They'll do it to you. They'll do it to Bernie Sanders. They'll do it to Jill Stein. They're doing it to Stop Cop City protesters. They'll do it to anybody. And so that's why it's important.
Yeah, no, it's already being done. And this is my big beef with the left. As someone who grew up in a more liberal background, I left the Democrat. I voted once for a Democrat. And then in 2008, I saw very clearly, actually, what people saw in 2016 with the Democrats rigging it for Hillary against Bernie. I actually remember, people, I don't know if people paid attention, 2008 they did the same thing. But they did it for Obama against Hillary in 2008. Because they actually, I don't know if you recall, in the primaries in Florida, 2008, Hillary won the Florida primaries. The Democrat Party was freaked out because they had already decided internally, and I know this from some people that were pretty close to them, they had already decided internally that Obama was going to be their candidate. And so they basically said Florida's primaries, they voted on the wrong day, they said. And they pulled those primaries out so that Hillary would have lost all those votes. And then they did something similar in Ohio in 2008. So I started already realizing this is a crooked party. And I wasn't a fan of the Republicans either, but I'm just saying I recognize the crookedness. So you're talking to someone who sees a lot of the hypocrisy of the left, and it got glaring during Obama, because you talk to a lot of liberals and you say, hey, you guys protested and cried about Iraq, which I agree with. But then Obama went and did the same thing in Libya and no one batted an eye or said a word. That's the hypocrisy of the left that bothers me deeply, or troubles me, I should say.
He dropped so many bombs in Syria, they ran out of bombs. Literally, the Air Force literally ran out of bombs. That that's what I said. I say, it would have been better off if Mitt Romney would have won, because then at least you can get Democrats to protest a war. But when Barack Obama was doing it, Democrats just go to sleep. Barack Obama dropped more bombs than George Bush, and nobody noticed in the Democrat.
Right now, we have 2 wars ongoing under Biden, and you don't hear a single Democrat protesting. I guess a few are protesting Gaza, but fundamentally they are not opposed. Look, you've got Dick Cheney now supporting Kamala Harris, and these so-called liberals are voting for her. There's a problem within the ideology of people who are just aligned to the party and not to the actual issues, the real issues, right, that we're facing. And so to go back to your point about Trump, where, I didn't vote for Trump in 2016, but I was working for Russia. I was working for Russia Today, which is, finance from Russia. So I saw what we were doing with Russia Today. We were doing alternative news with people like Jesse Ventura, Tom
Ed
Hartman,
Schultz.
Larry King. I think it was before. I think Ed came right after that.
All right. Larry King. People forget Larry King had a show on RT.
We had Chris Hedges. Pulitzer Prize winner. We had some great people doing news, and just because our opinions were pushing topics that the military-industrial complex / Democratic establishment did not like, they then said RT is interfering in the election. How do we interfere in the election? By doing stories, American citizens telling stories and doing news that they didn't like. That was Russian interference. That's when I knew the Russian interference thing was a hot air. And Benny, as you mentioned, my father knew him for a long time. He was actually in the film Snowden, which you may have seen about Edward Snowden.
Correct.
The character of Nick Cage in that film is based on Bill Benny, who was this NSA insider, who was one of the early whistleblowers on the NSA and this huge issue of rampant spying going on. So we've known Benny for a while, and we interviewed Benny many times, and as well as others from the veterans of was it VIPs, Veterans for Peace, essentially, right? Yeah, but him and Ray McGovern and those other guys were out there saying exactly your point. It doesn't make sense. The Russia hack doesn't make sense. Assange brought up Seth Rich, the British ambassador Murray, who claimed to be the person who picked up the data, said he got it from a handoff. It wasn't from a Russian hack. So there's so much that we put into this, actually into the Roger Stone episode, because Roger was accused of being this kind of, conspirator with Assange and releasing the WikiLeaks, that was against Podesta. By the way, I heard that Podesta's buddy just got arrested for molestation of a child. Did you hear this?
No.
This is just coming out today. Someone sent me this. I guess Elon Musk retweeted it, that John Podesta's buddy, who basically was arrested for raping toddlers, Slade Somer, editor-in-chief at The Recount. I don't know. This is something to look up. This is right up your alley.
Okay, well, I can't vouch for the veracity of that report. I will look into it. But when you say that you saw that the Democratic Party had already made a decision that Barack Obama would be their nominee, that people inside the Democratic Party, what that really means is that the people inside the Democratic Party don't decide shit. They get shit decided for them. And who decides that? The war machine and Wall Street. And how do I know that it was Wall Street that made that decision? Because there was an email that came from Citigroup to the Barack Obama campaign in 2008 with a list of people that from Citigroup, from Wall Street, wanted in his cabinet. Every single name on that email ended up in Barack Obama's cabinet. Not only that, but he got more money, more donations from Wall Street than John McCain did that year. So that's who made the decision. And then they told the people in the party, because the people in the party don't run the party. The party's run by the donor class, which is the war machine and Wall Street. That's who runs the Democratic Party. Full stop. That's who runs it. And if you're supporting them, I just had this conversation with someone who considers himself a liberal, saying, well, we have to get her elected, Kamala, and then we work on getting the first step. We get the DREAM Act, and we get this, and we work on stopping the genocide. No, the only influence you have over a politician is your vote. And once you've already pledged your vote to them, they don't listen to you. They're never going to listen to you. And that's why the Democratic Party hasn't listened to their voting base since in my adult life. They've never listened to us. And so you got to stop voting for them. And this idea that you're going to be able to push them left after they get elected is a joke. It's a joke. It's an insult to my intelligence. It's never, show me when it's ever happened. When has it ever happened? Ever. Joe Biden ran on the public option and the minimum wage. Two things they never mentioned after he got elected. They never, ever mentioned the public option. They never, ever mentioned, and then he squashed it. And he also broke a union strike. He broke the rail. I mean, they're the exact, and then he started two wars. So it's the exact opposite of what people think they're voting for. So this idea that you're going to vote for the Democrat because they're the lesser evil and then move them left is a childlike brain. That's what that is.
It's childlike, and in this case, it doesn't even correlate to the reality. I mean, we have evidence, empirical evidence of 4 years of Trump, and we have empirical evidence of 4 years of a Biden.
That's right.
And, just compare the reality. The reality was that Trump did not, this is a major thesis of our series, and part of the reason we believe that the deep state came after Trump so hard. Trump did not engage in new wars. He did not perpetuate new wars. He could have escalated in Syria, instead, doing the same thing, by the way, that Obama and Clinton were doing, which was to support the jihadists, right, who brought from all over the world to overthrow Assad. Actually, Trump didn't support them. ISIS quieted down. He allowed the Russians, Hezbollah, and other forces to really operate, to essentially put an end to that. Now they're on the resurgence again. Afghanistan, we left behind
all our equipment,
hundreds of thousands of rounds of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of, I should say hundreds of billions of dollars of equipment, or tens of billions of dollars. I can't remember the exact number, but huge amounts of equipment, like you mentioned, everything from machine guns to missiles. I mean, it's crazy, helicopters, tanks, wild that they left all this behind, because as Trump said, Milley, or one of these idiots, said it was cheaper.
Yes.
And he's like, so
by the way,
great.
Milley, in case you don't know, just last week gave a paid speech to Wall Street, and he thanked the bankers for their service. That's who Milley is, right? So you hear all these Mattis and Milley. How do you get to be a general? You get to be a general because Wall Street says so. That's how you get to be. And who do they serve? They don't serve the president, as we found out that the generals were lying to Trump about the troop levels in Syria. Trump said, pull them out. They said, okay, we will. And then they didn't. And they lied to so the people committing treason are the generals. Why? Because they don't work for you. They don't work for the president. They work for Wall Street and the war machine. They always have, and they always will. And that's why that's why we have 800 military bases around the world. And we still don't have healthcare or a functioning infrastructure, but we can spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine for not. I mean, everybody could have healthcare. We could have high speed rail. We could have a new sports stadium in every major city in the country for the money we gave. We don't have any of it. We don't even have clean drinking water in the United States. We'd have nothing.
Well, that's why, I mean, RFK Jr. coming in would be so amazing. And I think he terrifies, RFK coming in with Trump administration, he terrifies a lot of these guys, right? Have you seen some of these tweets? That
of course.
Oh my God, look, if he's in charge of the FDA and if he takes Florida to the water, this is the end. It's the end of what?
It's the end of what?
Perpetuating illness. You perpetuate illness. You perpetuate war. It's very clear. But speaking of generals, we do interview General Flynn, who was not of that mindset. He was not someone who was, he's very clear in our interview. We talk about it. He's like, it's like we create the enemy that we then have to fight.
Yes.
Why do you leave behind weapons in Afghanistan? So that you can create your next enemy. The same way that why did we arm Saddam in the 80s? Why did we? It's like so many different points, right? We armed different factions that ultimately turn into the enemy when the tide turns, or we decide now we need something to do. We need someone to fight because, as you said, it's an endeavor of perpetual war that feeds the financial interests.
As Julian Assange said, these wars are not meant to be won; they're meant to be ongoing.
Yes,
and in Syria, with the biggest joke was that the Pentagon was giving money to terrorists, right? Like to al-Nusra. And the CIA was giving money to ISIS, and they would often fight each other. They would have terrorist groups fighting each other. One side is being funded by the Pentagon, the other side being funded by the CIA. How do I know that? Because it was on page 38 of the Washington Post. It was so blatant, even they reported it. Of course, on page 38, not on the front page, but it got reported. And that's how I know it. But again, that Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper are never going to tell you that. They're never going to lead a story about war with that, and they're never going to tell you that in relationship to the Syrian war. They're just going to say Assad's a bad guy. It's always a bad guy. Oh, there's Saddam's a bad guy. Gaddafi's a bad guy. Assad's a bad guy. Putin's a bad guy. There's always some bad guy, the new bad guy and we're the good guy. So the world's terrorists are the United States military. There's nobody comes closer. Nobody comes close to our body count. There's no terrorist organization that is even close to the United States. So let me just ask you. Right now, you're being encouraged by the CDC to get your 10th booster.
Oh, really?
Bivalent. What number are you on?
Thankfully, I've never played that game. I forgot that it was still a thing, actually.
Yeah, it's still a thing.
Everyone still gets COVID regardless, right? So
yes.
They want it to become like a flu shot, right? Which also doesn't work, by the way. I figured this out when I was 18. I think I got my first and only flu shot. It didn't work. I got sick. But nowadays, when JD Vance says that, they go, but that means it was working. It's like,
that's what they say. No, that's the FDA says the flu shot is very safe and effective, and if you get it, it's not going to stop you from getting the flu. I mean, don't be a moron. Of course, a vaccine doesn't stop you from getting the thing you're being vaccinated against. It just is supposed to lessen your symptoms. So that's but what a great out it is for the big pharma. That no, it's not. Can you imagine them saying that about any other? Hey, no, it's not supposed to stop you from getting polio. It's just supposed to lessen your polio symptoms. But anyway.
Right. I mean, it's like, I don't think any of us are going to, how do you say? We are not at a particular risk from COVID and from the flu, thankfully, in our age group.
We never were. It was always a lie.
Exactly. I knew about this from COVID from the first month or two. When you looked at the data, it was pretty clear. And so I was pretty much, I pretty much, when you talk about like why I actually supported Trump in 2020, I changed from a position of being neutral and just saying, let's let's see what goes on here with his administration, to 2020, seeing that whenever he said things like hydroxychloroquine or we need to end these lockdowns, he was turned into a monster.
Yeah, he was pilloried.
He was pilloried. He was castigated. He was literally turned into a monster, demonized by the media. And he'd already been demonized, but what they did was so horrendous because it was costing lives, as we know. It cost us the economy. It cost us so many people affected psychologically by the lockdowns, children who developmentally were set back. Obviously, the economy, as we know, the businesses that were shut down.
41% of Black-owned businesses shuttered permanently.
Yeah. I mean, and to this day, a lot of the economic effects we're seeing are because of this insanity that was played out through COVID. And then obviously the forced vaccination, which was, to me, that was it. That was the nail on the head for any credibility that this Democrat administration should be out from Biden all the way down, because the Democrats as a whole pushed censorship. They tried to force vaccinate people. And so, and they obviously were locking our economy down. So on those points alone, I'm shocked that they have any support it left anyone who has, some level of intelligence, being able to see rationally. But again, it's become a cult in itself. And they say the MAGA is the cult, but really the Democrat Party, the ones who were wearing the masks for 2 years, that was the cult.
That's the cult. That's the irony there. That's the irony. Well, everybody should check out this new series, all the President's Men. It's going to be airing on Tucker Carlson Network, starting maybe this Friday, but definitely next week. Sean Stone, anything you want to say to our audience before we say goodbye?
No, I appreciate you having me on. I really appreciate the direction that you've gone. I think you've helped to educate and awaken a lot of people. And it's, again, it's refreshing to see a new, what we call like the new Avengers, right? The new alliance coming together. People like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and many other disaffected Democrats, maybe even Elon Musk, right? I'm not sure if he was a Democrat, but essentially disaffected Democrats coming together saying we can reshape a movement. And whatever it may be, Trump may be the head of it right now, but essentially it's moving us to a place, I think, of wanting national sovereignty, wanting to basically focus on our country's well-being, ending these endless wars. I mean, these principles alone, I'm excited, by the people coming around. Russell Brand too. It's like people coming around this movement, and I think it's so much bigger than Donald Trump. So I'm excited to see this gathering of energy. Well,
the only thing again that actually does scare the establishment is for people to realize that they have a lot more in common that divides them, and that we share a common enemy, and that common enemy is the oligarchy, because we don't live in a democracy, we live in an oligarchy. And if people, that's why they do all this stuff to keep us divided. That's why they push trans rights. It even divides the gay community, right? It turns women against the trans community. It's nuts what they're doing, and they push all the anybody who questions big pharma is now anti-science and an anti-vaxxer. Anybody who wants to, we just got an Obama appointed judge agreeing that we got to get fluoride out of the water. It turns out the people who were sounding the alarm about that weren't tinfoil hat crazies. They were actually following the science. So that's right. The first thing the establishment does is they try to discredit you, and that's exactly what they did to me. That's exactly what they did to Bobby Kennedy. That's exactly what they did to Dr. Robert Malone and McCullough and Joe Rogan. Turns out Joe Rogan was the one telling you the truth, and the people lying to you was Chris Cuomo, Anderson Cooper, and Don Lemon, and Sanjay Gupta. Those are and Rachel Maddow and the President of the United States and Dr. Fauci. Those were the liars. And I had to remind people that, I have people that go, Dr. Fauci did so much for the gay community with the AIDS. I go, did you ever see that movie, The Dallas Buyers Club? You know who the bad guy in that movie is? It's Dr. Fauci.
Yes, I know the writer of that script, and I've actually had conversations about how they had to take that out. But essentially, yes, what you just said is absolutely correct. So towards your point, though, I love that Cuomo has kind of come around. He seems to be.
Well, he got vaccine injured, and so he got prescribed ivermectin. So all of a sudden, Same thing happened with me, except that happened way earlier. I got vaccine injured in March of 2021. And as soon as I looked into it, I hadn't looked into the COVID narrative. And as soon as I looked into it, I found out they were lying about. There wasn't anything they weren't lying about, from funding the virus to where the virus originated to masks to transmission and contraction of the virus with the vaccine to herd immunity to natural immunity to side effects. There wasn't anything they weren't lying about from start to finish.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, Sean, I appreciate it. And I look forward to watching your new series. It looks fantastic because if it can happen to Donald Trump, it can happen to anybody that the establishment doesn't like. If you are a peace, they already did it to Bernie Sanders when he was running. They Russiagated him. They said he was Russian. And then Bernie Sanders went right along with it because he's such an asshole.
Right, no backbone.
Yeah, not zero. But that's what they'll do. They call Jill Stein Russian, and if Cornel West could draw a crowd, he couldn't draw 5 people in Harlem. That's how. But if he was ever a threat, they do the same thing to him. And but he's lived in ivory tower his entire life. They got no worries about him. Anyway, Sean, thank you very much. Sean Stone, the new series is called All the President's Men, airing on the Tucker Carlson Network. Thanks for coming on.
Got it, Jimmy. Thank you for having me.
Hey, the economy has been a major burden to the average American. Wages are flat, expenses are up, and it's very hard to manage to pay all the bills without grabbing for your credit card. If you're a homeowner and you're frustrated with that cycle, I need you to make a 10-minute no-obligation call today to our friends at American Financing. Interest rates are coming down and are now in the low 5s. And if you're constantly carrying credit card balance each and every month with the rate in the 20s, American Financing can show you how to put your hard-earned equity to work and get you out of debt. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving their customers an average of $800 a month. And if you get started today, you may not have to make next month's mortgage payment. Call American Financing today at 888-804-0303. That's 888-804-0303. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Jimmy. Everybody, come see us on tour. We'll be in Columbus, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.